Yeah, we are recording. So,
Great to be here.
yeah, thank you, Edison. I've been wanting to get you on for, I think, over a year now. But it just, timing hasn't worked out. But now that we're doing it not live through the radio station, it's a little bit easier. We have more flexibility. So, but yeah, just been a crazy, crazy week, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like there's so many things that are coalescing at once. It's really hard to kind of process everything. So, it's nice to be able to come here and just chat.
Yeah.
And
Kind of get away from it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get back to brass tacks in a
Yeah.
way. But, times like this, it's always tricky because you have to watch your mental state the whole time and just see exactly, where you're trending and if you need to correct a little bit. And I think what makes it difficult is that there's so many things that you have to keep track of. It's not just one thing and then you have your foundations in these other areas. Kind of a lot of different things feel like they're a little up in the air.
Yeah. Well, it's not even like just even what happened on campus this week for me. It's obviously the election is going on and there's other things happening. Like I graduate in less than a month now, which is kind of crazy to think about. And especially I gotta imagine that's a stressful time regardless. But when you're in the middle of a pandemic and there's all sorts of tension and everything going on, like trying to find out what's the next step in my life that I take beyond just graduation is kind of difficult. So
yeah, I mean, I remember graduating as well, and it starts to feel real. It feels real for everyone at a little different time. For me, it was a month or two before graduating. I thought, what's going to happen after this? I had a vague idea of what I was going to do, but you never know for sure. Things can always change. Situations can always change. But I feel you, I guess.
Well, I mean, we got a lot to talk about because you're just talking about what you do. Like, you are the throws coach for the track and field program here.
Yep.
You're also our strength and conditioning coach on the cross-country side.
Yep.
You also are TA for some dance classes here.
Yep.
You majored in English language and literature.
Yep.
And you're also pursuing a career in real estate.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So that seems like a lot.
You can add pre-med to that, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So
wow.
Last fall, I started down a completely different course, which was taking pre-med classes to go to med school. So you could add that to the heap, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely get into everything that you just mentioned here, but just to start, the very basic question I ask everyone: why Gordon? What brought you here? How'd you hear about it? And just tell me your journey here.
Yeah, so I actually have a very funny story, ironic in some ways, I think. So I grew up in the area. I grew up in Boxford, which is a town that is about 30 minutes away. Pretty small, about 8,000 to 10,000 people. Was homeschooled. So my parents homeschooled me straight through, so from kindergarten up till I graduated high school. And when I was looking at colleges, which happened like junior, senior year, I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to go. I knew that I wanted to do English because it's what I liked when I was in high school, my version of high school at least. So I was looking at different places, and one thing that was really important for me is that I had played baseball all through high school and when I was younger, since I was 9, but I had been dabbling since I was probably 4. So I really wanted to join a baseball team, and one of the things that was really critical to me when I was looking for a school was the baseball coach and the team, and whether they wanted me, whether it was a good fit. So it was a combination of finding a really good academic program and a good athletic program that was also kind of close by, because I didn't want to go to California. I didn't want to be too far away from home. So I was looking at Bates, and I was looking at Bowdoin and Salve Regina. I took I did some baseball camps at Harvard. I did one at Amherst. So I kind of looked around. I looked at a lot of places. Fitchburg was another one I think I looked at. And most places had one of the things I wanted. They didn't really have both. So Harvard had a great academic program. Athletic program was okay. The coach and I, we liked each other, but it wasn't a connection that I thought was really there. Also, it's just impossible to get in. So there's always that element to it. Places like Amherst, I just didn't really like the feel of. So everything was a little different, and I couldn't really find a place that I would confidently say that I wanted to go there. So after a couple months of searching, I thought, well, maybe I should take a gap year. I can do some learning on my own. I thought about thought about doing some different things with that gap year. And I was pretty set on that. But then my dad said, why don't you send your baseball recruiting video to Gordon? I knew about Gordon. During high school, I had done some high ropes stuff here. I had done some lab work here. So I was familiar with it. I was adamant I didn't want to go. My parents brought it up multiple times, and I said, no, I've been there. I don't want to go there. I don't like the vibe. For no particular reason, I just didn't really I didn't want to be so close that it felt like I was just going to a different version of high school. But when he said you should send your video there, I said, okay, why not? What's there to lose? So I sent my baseball recruiting video, and Coach Ripel, who was the head coach at the time, took an interest. So he called me, asked if I wanted to come meet. So I went. I really actually liked him. I walked around the campus and enjoyed it. So I started to think, I was adamant about this before, but now it seems like it's a possibility. So after that meeting, I thought about it some more. Then I met with a couple faculty, so I called Dr. Alter, who I don't know if he's still here, but he was a history professor. And I had a great conversation with him. So the pieces were just falling into place, if you will. And I think it was around December, I finally thought, I think this is the right place to go. So I met with admissions, went through that whole process, and came here.
Yeah, that's great. I know, obviously, I didn't even mention this when I was listing off everything. You played baseball here for a year.
Yeah.
So tell me how your career in athletics got started. If you started out here with baseball, I assume you were playing baseball throughout high school. But yeah, tell me how that got started for you.
Yeah, so like I said, the roots of it were when I was really young. My dad had always liked baseball, so he wanted me to get into it. And, obviously it was just something growing up that I was around and I liked it. I thought it was fun. So, I remember when I was really young, just hitting tennis balls at the time with some plastic bat in the backyard. And then as I got older, I joined a team. In high school, I was really into it, working out a lot. And then when I went to college, I knew that's something that I wanted to do. And I was really fortunate that I was able to find a coach who, at least I initially thought, I liked. So I joined the Gordon team, as I said, was with the team for a season and a half. So 2 preseasons and then 1 full-fledged season in the spring. And then it was after that season and a half, if you will, that I started to have a little change of heart, and I thought maybe it's time for a change. And that's when it was over that winter break that I decided I think baseball isn't the right choice anymore, but I still wanted to do a sport because I really liked just having that outlet other than academics to either release stress or just kind of get away from the mental side of life, if you will. So I joined the track team, and I thought I might as well do something where I can throw, because that's what I did with baseball the whole time. And javelin, I always thought was just cool because it's you can throw it far. First of all, it's a spear. It kind of had a lot of things that I guess were appealing at the time. And joined the team with Coach Rich and did track for 2 seasons, 2 spring seasons, and then did not do it my senior year for various reasons. But yeah, that was my athletic career at Gordon. I guess a snapshot of it.
So this is you graduated in 2017, right?
Yeah, 2017.
So, yeah, so actually that photo up there is a track team from 17. And it's partially covered by the jersey now, but I guess if you weren't doing it, you're probably not in it.
That was the season I didn't do.
Yeah.
If you had taken a picture the year before, I would have been there.
Yeah. So you mentioned Jav, obviously. Did you do any other events? Did you come onto the track at all for sprinting or anything like that, or was javelin your main thing?
Javelin was definitely the main thing. It's the one that I practiced over the summer a lot. It's the one that I did a lot of independent work other than team practices. I threw the disc a little bit, but coming from baseball, it was hard to try and do multiple sports or multiple new events rather. So I thought it's probably most suitable for me to just pick one event. But I did do a little disc. In my second season, Coach Carter at the time wanted me to run a 200. I ran 1 200 and I was like, I'm not going to do this again. But I still ran. It was still running during practices for training for JAV. But it wasn't something I competed in.
Had you had any track experience in high school, or was this a brand new thing that you...
Brand new.
Yeah.
Yeah, brand new. My dad had run track in high school. He ran all through high school and ran solo in college, not on a team, but still was really into it. So I grew up with someone who really liked track. We always watched the Olympics. So I was familiar with track and field and knew all the different events and knew some big names. But in terms of personally pursuing it, it was brand new when I started JAV. So
what are some of your highlights as an athlete here at Gordon? Any meets that you remember stand out to you or anything like that?
Well, so it's funny. My PR for JAV is 176 feet, I believe, low 52 meters. And I didn't get it at a Gordon meet, but I got it in the summer between Gordon meets. So I did Bay State games one summer, and then that's when I had my PR throw, which honestly felt great at the time. In terms of highlights from Gordon, throwing was always fun. I had a Smith meet when I qualified for New England's. That was really gratifying because it had felt like the work I had put in finally paid off, and I was able to go to New England's, which was really fun. And back then too, this isn't really an athletic highlight, but it's more of a team highlight. The team was so small. Now we're so big. We have 60 people, or 40 to 60 to 65 people. Back when I did it, and Corinne can attest to this, the team was very small. So there was a much different dynamic. And when I had my throw, the New England's throw, it was really nice to have a small group of people who really kind of congratulated me at the time, because it was an accomplishment for me, especially not having done track much before. So that memory stands out. And there's some other funny memories, working out in Bennett in the winter on this slippery ground with a plastic javelin. So make do with what you have, I suppose, in those situations. But yeah, it was fun. It was a good time.
Yeah. So I assume you didn't run cross country. Is that correct?
No.
Yeah.
No, I was too scared.
I'm just trying to do the math in my head. So if you took 17 off, then Coach Weichert never coached you. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So how did you connect with him to come back to the program to be a throws coach?
So this is another really interesting story. Things kind of just fell into place, interestingly. So yes, you're correct. Coach Weichert took over the year that I decided not to do track. And I remember I actually went to, I don't know if he remembers this. I've never asked, but he probably does. I went to a track meeting, one of those intro track meetings, I believe in the fall, where he was just talking about the team, talking about what he expects to do to the program. And I thought it was interesting, but at that time I had already kind of decided it wasn't for me this year. And I remember him saying things. He knew that I had thrown well, and he knew a little bit about me. So he, I guess, contemplated with me being a captain or something, just because he liked my outlook on athletics, from what I remember. But I said, thanks, but no. I have other things that take priority. And that was it. I didn't talk to him anymore. I didn't really think about it. And then I graduated. And on graduation day, graduation day is kind of hectic. You're excited, but you're also trying to take in all the memories. You're trying not to forget anything. And it was after I had walked across the stage and gotten my diploma and everything. And I was talking to different professors, and my parents were there. And they struck up a conversation with Coach Weichert, because they're just friendly, and he knew me, and they introduced themselves. And I believe, if I remember correctly, my parents said something like, "Oh yeah, he liked track at the time, and if you're ever looking for a coach, he might be interested." And Coach Weichert said, "Yeah, that might be something that would be fun. He might have asked originally too. I don't remember who asked first. But anyway, the conversation came up randomly at my graduation, and then my parents called me over and said, he might want you as a track coach. And I said, sure. I mean, if it works out, it would be really fun. And it did work out. So then I joined the team as an assistant throws coach and / strength coach. And I've been here since. It was a very funny situation, I think, that I had kind of grown apart from the sport just for other reasons, and then it pulled me back right as I was leaving Gordon. I thought that was an interesting coincidence.
Did you ever have any desire to be a captain or coach when you were an athlete yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're talking about baseball captains, it's always something that carries a little bit of weight to it in a positive way. It means that you're a leader on the team and that you hold certain qualities that the coach deems or the players deems important. With baseball, I never was a captain. And then same thing with track. The main reason with track was, I mean, I don't know the specifics, but, I was pretty new to the team. I think it just wasn't something, I didn't have enough time to mature into that role, maybe. And then when I was competing, I never thought of being a coach. I wasn't necessarily opposed to it. It wasn't something that I thought about and thought, no, this isn't for me. It was just something that I guess hadn't come into my purview yet. But when it did, I thought, oh, this is great. Because at that time, and we'll probably get into this later, talking about, post-graduation, but at that time I knew that I was going to be in the area and that I would have some time to devote to things like coaching while I was working on where I was going in the future.
So I didn't meet you until track my freshman year, and I think junior year for me. So last year, 19. That was the first time you were officially involved with the cross country team. Is that right?
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of overlap between the programs, but
last fall was the first time that I was assistant coach for cross country because Elizabeth couldn't make it work that season. So Coach Weichert needed a new coach. He thought it would be valuable because I am a strength coach in the spring. So he thought to give cross country runners that rigidity of a strength program might help them.
So do your philosophies as a coach do you have to adapt when you're in one season versus the other, considering the athletes that you're working with? Obviously cross country we're all running distance, whereas in track we have a lot of different individual events that different athletes are competing in. So how do you work with that?
Sure, I think that's a really interesting question. I think it's definitely a different mindset. I mean, firstly, I think in the spring I have a much more active role because I'm the coach of 10 to this season we're looking at 22 throwers. So the nice thing about cross country is that I feel like I really like my role in cross country, but it's not as active of a role. In terms of mindset, yeah, it's totally different. When I'm coaching throwers, it's about speed and power, and you could say aggression because it's this one moment or 5 seconds of really intense focus and explosiveness and all these kind of words that you think of when you think of a shot putter, or at least I do. Where with track, or cross country rather, it's a lot more calculated, I would say, insofar as that when you're running a race, especially a longer race, and I've learned a lot of this from Coach Weichert in terms of strategy for racing, because I never run, so I didn't really know this, but you really have to time out your moves and when you speed up, when you slow down, when you make a move. And those are things that you really don't have to focus on if you're a thrower. You have to focus on a completely other set of skills. So I think between last season and this season, talking about cross country, I've really learned a runner's mindset, if you will. It's something that I really didn't have before, which I like because I think it makes me a better assistant coach during cross country, because I'm able to, when people are running, I'm able to break down better what I'm seeing rather than thinking, they're running kind of fast, So I think there was a maturity or a maturing of coaching in that way.
So I know you. One thing that we have in common is English is my minor. No, was your major.
Yep.
So why? No, you mentioned very briefly at the start that was something you were interested in high school. But why did you choose that when you got here, and what was the intention in terms of using that going forward?
So yeah, like I said, I really found my passion for literature really when I was 13 or 14. I started taking classes outside of my house. So I took English, took different English classes, and I found a power in words and in books that I hadn't really seen before. And then as I went through high school, that just grew. So by the time I was looking at colleges, I thought, this is something that I want to do. In terms of looking, 5-10 years ahead post-college, and this is when I'm picking schools, like looking 5-10 years ahead when I'm looking at being an English major, I didn't really have a goal in mind. I wasn't sure exactly where an English major was going to lead me. I just knew that I really liked it. I knew that all of the skills you learn as an English major are really valuable regardless of what you do. So critical thinking, being able to take in a lot of information, parse it down into its constituent parts, pick out the most important parts, and then act upon those parts. So skills like that, I knew that I would learn, even if what I did after college didn't exactly fall into the, I'm going to be a professor, or, I'm going to do strictly academic research on like modernist literature. So I picked it because I really liked it and I knew that it was going to benefit me in the future.
So what kind of literature do you enjoy?
So my favorite type of literature is early 20th century high modernism, which is a lot of fancy sounding words, but it basically means books that were written between 1900 and 1925 to 1930. And
is there any particular genre in that, or just the time period in general?
Probably the time period is a better way to describe it. I don't know if there's a genre that I would say encapsulates my favorite books. I mean, if this gives any indication, some of my favorite authors. My favorite author is James Joyce, who was an Irish author whose kind of the height of his career was the early 19th century. He published his major work in 1922. So he's definitely top of the heap. I also really like Vladimir Nabokov, William Faulkner, who's an American modernist. And I don't know if they fall into a certain genre, but they're all grappling with similar themes. Or rather, they're trying to push language beyond the bounds of what was thought possible beforehand. So if you're looking at Victorian literature, they were doing their own thing that were really interesting. But once you get to modernism, you start seeing the formal elements of books, like chapters and how long sentences are, like stream of consciousness, which was this idea that you're trying to capture what the mind does on paper. And one of the ways to do that was to eliminate pauses, because when you're thinking, you don't really pause. Your brain is always kind of moving. So if you get rid of periods, semicolons, colons, commas, and you just have a stream of consciousness, is where the name came from, they thought that that's a way to kind of delve deeper into the inner person and kind of work through what that means. And I find that fascinating. I still do.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite classes that you took here?
Oh, there's so many. My academic experience at Gordon was great. I have no regrets other than not taking other classes that I wish I'd taken. But I think my classes with Dr. Stutz and Professor Stevick were great. Dr. Logeman was also great. I could actually say great things about all the professors I had. In terms of favorite classes, Nobel Literature was really good. It was a class that I took early on. I believe it was the spring of my freshman year. And I just was opened up to a lot of different novels and writing styles that I hadn't considered before, which was, to a freshman who was really interested in books, was great. I also took Irish literature with Dr. Logeman, and that's actually where I found Joyce. I had heard his name before, but hadn't really researched anything. And then I read a A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, which was the second book that he published, and that really cemented my interest in him. And then I took a lot of classes that aren't literature classes that I enjoyed. I took art history at Gordon. I took 2 semesters of that and then TA'd that class for the next 3 years. I took stone sculpture with Dr. Zingarelli, and that was fascinating to work with a medium other than words. Kind of a 3D physical medium was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had most of the, I guess you mentioned Stutz, Stevic, Logan. I've had all of them. And yeah, I totally agree. The program's really strong. And you mentioned Nobel Literature. Was that a 140 class when you took it? You're talking about your freshman year?
I believe it was in the hundreds. Yeah, it was an entry class.
Yeah, that was the second English class I took my freshman year, and I wish I didn't officially declare my minor until the very end, the last week of my freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I had known that going for the minor, the 20 credits you need, it all needs to be the 200 to 400 level course. It ended up working out because I think I got core credit for fine arts or literature or something in there. But yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed all the classes I've been in.
Yeah, so I didn't even speak to the creative writing classes I took. Dr. Stevic, or actually Professor Stevic rather.
He told us just to call him Mark.
Yeah, or Mark.
Yeah.
I can't get out. I don't know where I got this, but calling professors by their first names, just it doesn't feel right.
It depends on the professor for me.
Okay, yeah.
Like Dr. Gardner in the econ department, he's always going to be Dr. Gardner.
Mm-hmm.
But Scott Thurman, who is no longer here, but his specialty was film, and I had a few classes with him. He was fine with Scott, and a lot of us just kind of ran with that.
Yeah, I'll get back to creative writing in a second, but one thing that was really interesting is after I graduated, Dr. Stutz, who I still call Dr. Stutz just from habit, said, "Oh, you can call me Chad now." And I thought, what? So this doesn't fit with my worldview. It was just such a funny postgraduate remark that caught me off guard, really, because it meant I had actually transitioned in a very literal sense from one place to another. So I thought that was a funny moment.
I remember when I turned 18, one of my my old cross country coach, who was also the father of one of my teammates, we were at a local 5K that summer, and I mentioned I just turned 18, and he said, "Call me Jeff instead of Coach Silver now," which again, it was kind of the same thing. It just kind of didn't register to me. That's when I kind of realized I'm an adult now. There's certain things that come with that, I guess. But
yeah, it's those, what would you call them? Not markers, but kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Regardless. Milestones.
Yeah,
that's the word I'm looking for. Anyway. But yeah, so I had a creative writing concentration when I was here. I picked it up pretty late, actually. I really like creative writing. It was something that I knew I wanted to do, and fortunately with my schedule, I was able to pick up the concentration. But classes like Intro to Creative Writing, Poetry and Poetics, Advanced Creative Writing, those were also just fantastic. Working a totally different part of your brain. When you take class with Dr. Stutz, it's analytical. It's looking at a novel, regardless of what that novel is, breaking down characters, seeing themes, motifs, all these different things. Creative writing, I personally think that each one complements the other, but when you're doing creative writing, you have to look to the other side of your brain, look at how things are fitting together, and look how to create content based on how those things fit together. So, I could go on forever, but those are some of the highlights, I suppose.
When it comes to creative writing, are you a fiction guy, a poetry kind of guy, nonfiction, playwriting? What do you most enjoy?
Definitely fiction. Interestingly, people always said that I was a good poet, even though I never thought I was. I did really well in Mark's poetry class, but it was definitely pure fiction that I really gravitated toward. I think it was in part just because of the authors that I liked. As you read, what you read really informs, in my opinion, what you write. And I was reading a lot of Joyce, I was reading a lot of Faulkner, a lot of T.S. Eliot, Gertrude Stein, Joseph Conrad a little bit in there, H.G. Wells. So I was reading a lot of, novel-esque fiction. Just words and trying to convey exactly what's going on. I mean, I think there's always this play between how real do you make your fiction, insofar as do you use real names, do you change those names when you're describing someone walking down the street. What level of detail do you use there? Do you go really, really in depth, or do you take more of a magical realism approach? I mean, that you could do that. That's like a Pablo Neruda kind of vibe. I went with more realism, but in my journey as a creative writer, at least. But yeah.
So I still remember. I guess with the budget cuts and everything, it's not this way anymore. But used to have 2 core physical education classes that you had to take, and if you played a sport, you could get out of one of them. If you played 2 sports, which again, there's a lot of overlap, but I technically do with cross country and track.
Yeah.
They still only let you get out of one. So I had to take a class, and the one that looked most interesting to me was ballroom, men's ballroom dancing.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and you were the TA, which
Yep.
I totally was not expecting. But so just I know, like, obviously I had you as a TA, but
Yeah.
like, tell me how, like, where did that come from in your life?
Sure. So yeah, I remember that moment. That was very funny. The look on your face was of utter surprise. Like, oh, he's in here too.
Yeah. And Sinead was in that class as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are a lot of track people who actually took that class at one point or another. Yeah. So like you said, I had done baseball, switched to track. It still only counted as 1 PE, so I needed another one. And I was going to take canoeing or fly fishing or just something easy that I could get out of the way. And once again, I kind of was steered in another direction because I believe it was the summer before, I think it was my senior year. I was talking to my mom about what PE class I was going to take. And I was saying I was going to take, one of these basic ones. I had done La Vida. I did the canoeing section. So I thought, just take canoeing. It's easy. But she said, oh, why don't you just take something different that's more fun? So she said, why don't you take ballroom dancing? And I thought, never. I was not a dancer in high school. I was never that guy. It just wasn't something that appealed to me in the least. I didn't think I was good at it. So when she brought up the idea, I said, no, absolutely not. I'm pretty sure I walked out of the room, not out of indignity, but just because it was so absurd that I couldn't even remark on it beyond saying no. But, I thought about it, and she kind of kept saying the positives of it. Mostly it's a good skill to know.
That's why I took it.
Yeah. You're never gonna know when you need it, and when you need it, you need it. It's to not know how to dance when you need to know how to dance can be brutal.
I still remember when I was telling my mother what my schedule was going to be after I'd registered for classes, and I mentioned I'm going to get my PE requirement out of the way, and I'm going to do ballroom dancing, and she, I didn't even have my phone on speaker, and both of my roommates were in the room at the time, and they heard my mother just audibly. She was so excited that I was going to get the chance to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. I mean, it's just great Gordon offered it, I think. But anyway, yeah. So over time, I guess my wall of saying no every time degraded, and eventually I said, why not? I thought, it is a good skill. I gave my mom that one, so why not just try it? What's the worst that could happen? Really, you're just bad, and who really cares? So I went into the class. Again, this is ballroom dance, which the distinction will make more sense later. And I met Miss Tina, as everyone wanted to call her, who was great. She was actually the kind of professor I was dreading, because very no nonsense. She's from Gloucester. Mass. If you don't do something right, she'll call you out in class without any hesitancy, not thinking about if you're embarrassed, which I actually think for a class like dance is positive because it gets people out of that fear that they might have walking in. But yeah, so I took the class and I wasn't very good. At least I thought I wasn't very good. I had rhythm just from sports, and I play guitar. So I knew how to keep count and everything. But the footwork was just something that I'd never dealt with before. So getting used to that, when we were doing, I think we started with Foxtrot, and I said, what is this? I mean, this is just something that I never envisioned myself doing. And then we did merengue, and I thought, I don't know how to move my hips at all. Like, not at all. In baseball, the thing to do is to keep your hips steady so you can generate more power, or the same thing with track. So it was a total 180 on kind of what you need to think about physically as you're kind of performing these different acts. So I went through the semester, and over time it became more fun, as anything does. I started to enjoy it more. I think I got a little better. And then the semester was coming to a close. It was actually a quad class. So the quad was coming to a close. And Miss Tina came up to me and she said, would you like to be a TA? And I thought, what? I was baffled. I didn't even know how to respond. I mean, I think I said what, kind of like not knowing what else to say. And I think I said, why would you want me as a TA? I'm not that good. And she said that, at least in her mind, I broke things down well in terms of the different steps we had to learn. I was able to say, okay, first you start with this, and then you do this, and then you turn your torso this way, and then you step here. And she said that even though there are some people who technically are better, in a TA position, she was looking for someone who was able to break it down and who was able to convey well what we were supposed to do, which I thought it was actually a compliment. Because I had done some teaching while I was at Gordon. I was a writing center tutor. I was a TA for art history. I was a part of, some different literature clubs, which is a little different, but still kind of in that vein. But yeah, so she asked me to be the TA. I said fine after my shock had worn off.
Did you say fine like in the first conversation, or did you take some time to think about it?
I believe I said it then, because Miss Tina is not the kind of person who likes to wait. So generally, if it had been someone else, I probably would have said, let me think about it, let me see if it works with my schedule. But I think she said, I need to know, or, let me know. And I said, sure, why not? It sounds like fun. I enjoyed the class. I could help Miss Tina. I like having things to do around campus. It seems like a good situation. So I said, okay. This is also actually kind of funny. So I next time it was offered, I was the TA. I did my TA role. It was a lot of fun. Then the quad ended, and this is the quad that ended the fall semester. So then, there's more classes in the spring. And at the end of the final class, she said, well, I'll see you for Latin dance. And I thought, what? I think I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you TA ballroom dance. You're obviously going to TA Latin dance. I said, I didn't take Latin dance. I don't know how to Latin dance. I mean, we had done some Latin dance in ballroom dance.
Right,
we do merengue, and I think we do a little cha-cha, a little salsa. But I said, I don't know how to do it. And she said, oh, you'll pick it up fine. And I thought, Miss Tina, I couldn't say no. I mean, I was her TA, so it's not like I couldn't renege at that point. So I said fine, I think with a sigh. And then I went to class as the TA for Latin, and it turned out to be fine. Miss Tina was really understanding that it would take me a little longer to learn these different steps that I had never seen before. And then once I got them, it was really great. And I ended up teaching, or TAing rather, those two classes up until they were canceled by Gordon. I remember I got a letter that said, we are going to inform you that these classes will no longer be offered. So, that was a little disappointing, because it was a fun outlet, just like track was an outlet, just like baseball was an outlet. Dancing was a great place where I could go and kind of do something that was a little more physical. So I was really thankful for the opportunity. I haven't talked to Miss Tina in a while, but I hope she's well.
Is this something that you would ever consider doing if you had the opportunity to do it again? Or like even if an opportunity came up outside of Gordon?
In a teaching role?
Well, yeah, in a teaching role, or just like, where do you feel like you can use the skills that you picked up?
I could definitely, I mean, this might sound selfish, but I could definitely use the skills for my own enjoyment. I think just dancing is fun, especially when you know what you're doing. You don't even have to be really good. You just have to be able to hold the rhythm and then know vaguely what you're doing. If you can do those two things, I think anyone can really have fun. So, I've never gone to like a dancing club, and I don't mean a club in the very colloquial sense, like going clubbing. But you can go to dance clubs where they do, they have merengue time and like cha-cha and salsa and bachata and like all these different dances. And everyone's there to do that dance. And I know there's one in Boston, but I've never been. So, I think a teaching role, maybe or maybe not, because I'm busy with other things and it's not something, I don't know if I would want to devote that time to. But I think to go and dance again, whatever the venue, would be really fun in the future. Hopefully I can do it again. Probably just a matter of time.
Yeah. So while we're on, what you're doing outside of academics beyond graduation, I don't even know. I think I maybe saw something over Instagram. I don't know if you have like a real estate page or something like that, but again, like I don't know exactly where I picked it up, but I know that that's a career that you're pursuing. So just kind of tell me how that got started, how you went down that road.
Sure. Yeah. So that goes back to before I graduated, when I was figuring out what I wanted to do after graduation. I knew that I wanted to pursue a PhD in English. I knew this before I graduated, so it was just a matter of figuring out timing. By the time Gordon was over, or as it was winding down, I really needed a break from academics. I love school. I always have liked learning. So I knew that I would come back to it because, people always say if you take a break, you'll never get back because other things get in the way. I knew that wasn't going to happen with me. So I thought after I graduate from Gordon, I'm going to take some time off. I was thinking probably about a year to do anything that I wanted to do besides academics and to just take a mental break, really. So I did that and acted on that, but I also knew that I needed to do something during that year. I wasn't just going to sit around the whole time. And I wanted to earn some money. So I thought real estate would be a good option because you can make your own hours. I'm generally perceived as being friendly. So I had that going for me. It didn't seem really hard, and the process of getting your license and joining a brokerage wasn't too bad. So I thought, I think this will be good. So the fall after I graduated, so I graduated in the spring, took the summer off. That fall, I started taking real estate classes, went through that whole process. After that was over, I joined Keller Williams in Topsfield / Newburyport. And that was really fun. This is kind of interesting. Within the office, I actually fell into a role of educator, which I didn't mean to. And there was a joke when I was at Gordon that I don't want to be a professor. Like I professed the whole time that I don't want to be a professor. But everyone said, you'd be a great professor, and you're probably going to be a professor. So I thought it was really interesting that when I went to Keller Williams, I fell into the teaching role. And if you're curious, I guess, my role was helping people set up their technology, basically. I mean, the average age of a realtor is like 55. So a lot of the time they need help setting up a website or setting up different programs. So I would help with that. I would run classes on the basics of real estate. So I think it was funny that, this kid who had just graduated from real estate school was now teaching people on like how to practice real estate. I thought that was kind of an interesting coincidence. But yeah, I started real estate then, and I'm still doing it now in varying degrees of time commitment. So back when I started, I was pretty busy. Now, because of other things that are taking up time that we'll probably get into later, like pre-med classes, I'm not taking as active a role, but it's still something that if the opportunity presents itself, if someone needs me as an agent to represent them in whatever capacity, I have it there, which I think is really useful.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so I guess let's move on to that. I didn't even realize that the pre-med thing was something that you were doing. But yeah, I guess you're still young enough, not too far out of college. Like, where do you see yourself, like, 10, 15 years down the road with everything that you've got going for you?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, and this is actually what brought me down the pre-med path. So I took that year off to do other things, and then in the middle of that year, you got to remember, too, that I was dead set on a PhD in modernist literature. I really wanted to go to England because I really like their style of, like, grad like master's program and then PhD. It's more expedited than here in the US. So, I was full-fledged, like, I'm going to do this. But then during my gap year, I just started thinking about where I saw myself in 5, 10, 15 years. And I started looking at the options for someone with a PhD in modernist literature. And the options are, you're either a fiction writer, you write articles about novels, but, you don't get paid enough to do that. So you're usually a professor. So all roads kind of led back to professorship, professorhood. And that wasn't something that I was interested in. And I also thought, I really love literature, but is it something that I can see myself doing for the rest of my life? Or at least for the foreseeable 15 years? And there was a little part of me that said no. Like, that thought, maybe this isn't exactly where I want to go. So, as with most things, it was just a little idea that started as just this little thing that I didn't really give much thought, but it was there. And then over time, it kind of grew. And I thought, well, maybe there's other options. Maybe there's other things that I want to be doing. And both my parents are doctors. They're both chiropractors. So, science runs in the family. So I talked to them about it, and they knew where I was coming from. They thought, that is a switch to spend since you were 13 writing and reading and thinking about these ideas, and then switch to science. They didn't think about it in like it's too late to switch, not at all. Rather, it was just, it seemingly came out of nowhere. So I gave it a little more thought, and it seemed something that was really viable. And when I was thinking about exactly what I wanted to do, so I knew that I wanted to do something other than literature, there were so many options. And because science was such a part of the family, I thought, maybe being a doctor. That might be something that would give me a sense of purpose and meaning that I might not find as acutely in literature. Really helping people in a very real and physical sense. So I thought, let's do it. I'm not by nature impulsive. Usually I think about things a lot, but at some point you just have to say, I have to try it. So I decided to take just intro chemistry, Gen Chem, at Harvard Extension School, because I knew I'd get a good taste of at least intro courses into a medical field at Harvard. I knew that I wouldn't be bogged down by bad professors there, so there were just a lot of positives. And the reason I only took one class was because I still wasn't sure if this was for me. I mean, I could have taken Gen Chem and thought, no way, like this is not something that I want to do. So I started with one. So I took it in the fall of 2019 and actually enjoyed it. I mean, as much as someone can enjoy Gen Chem, I mean, it was definitely a shift, and it was definitely something that I had to, you totally have to change how you think. I mean, you go from thinking about these lofty ideas about, what is art, truth with a capital T, I mean, kind of these things, to much more, what is entropy and what is enthalpy and how do you calculate the two, so it totally changes how you see the world in a very kind of real sense, especially as you get into it more. So I ended up liking it. So I took it in the fall, and I took the second half of that course in the spring, and I thought, yeah, this is something that I want to do, and this is a path that I want to go down. And clearly it's not an easy decision, especially after all that time in one track, but it felt like the right thing. So this semester, I'm taking organic chemistry and physics, which, again, the same thing as last year. It's a total shift in thinking processes, but it's going well. After this, I have to take biology, calculus, and I'm taking biostatistics. That'll be next year. In the spring, I'm taking physics 2 and biochemistry. So I guess that's what I'm doing now. And actually, just to finish this thought, after I finish the courses, I have to take my MCATs, which is the test that you take to apply to med schools. And then you go to med school and you spend, 8 years in med school. And then you come out and you do your residency, and then all the processes there. And in terms of what doctor I want to be, which is probably a logical question after all I just said, I think that the most reasonable answer is it's hard to say, because I've read a lot of testimonies of doctors, especially early on, and they said you really don't know until you get into med school. You see all the different kinds of doctors you can be, or doctor you can be, and really figure out what fits your personality, what fits your strengths in terms of, hand-eye coordination, mental capacity, all these different things. Right now, I think surgery would be great, and I don't know what kind of surgery. I mean, there's so many kinds. But something, again, where you're physically in a hospital helping someone in a very physical sense, I think would be really rewarding. So that's the track I'm on right now.
Yeah. I don't know how you have time for all this stuff. It's like everything that we've... I mean, I was just listening to him off at the start, but no, it's... Like, you're still here. You're still coaching and everything. It's... Yeah.
Yeah.
How... Do you feel like you don't have a lot of free time with everything that you've got going on?
It goes up and down. I was actually thinking about this earlier, especially, when we opened this segment, we talked about how there's so much going on right now. And I think in my own experience, a lot of that is kind of ebbs and flows. There's periods of intense busyness and then periods where you have a little more lull. And that has held true this semester. 2 weeks ago, when I had exams and you're busy with coaching and, all the things are going on, you feel like you don't have any free time. But then when things settle down a little bit, you remember that you do have free time. There are just moments when you don't have free time, which for me is really helpful, because if I'm really busy, I have a lot to do. In the moment, you think, how am I going to get all this done? What's going to happen? But then you just remember, once it's done, I'll have some time to recuperate, either, whether that's a day or a week. And then you come back refreshed, or, at least that's how I try to tackle being busy. And in terms of free time, I guess I manage time well. If you asked me that as I was analyzing myself, I'd probably say no, because, you're living with yourself. So you always see those moments when you are on your phone instead of studying, or, you take that extra half an hour to just do nothing. And is that perfect time management? No, but I also think you need those moments to just relax, to be able to work harder when you're actually working. But I've always been busy. I was busy at Gordon. I did a lot here. Like I said, I TA'd for art history. I worked in the writing center. I was a secretary for Sigma Tau Delta, which is an English honor society. I never took less than 16 credits. I like being busy, I think. It keeps things moving, and I figure, why not do the extra thing?
Yeah,
it's
that's
experience.
good. Yeah. That's really good. So I mean, with the free time that you do have, what kind of entertainment do you enjoy? I know you're a local here. Are you a Boston sports fan or anything else? Obviously, you love literature, but what do you like in terms of entertainment?
It varies. I find that my free time manifests itself in a lot of different ways. Like you said, Boston, I still really love baseball. So when the playoffs are going, or World Series, of course, I'm always engaged in that. Patriots, I do follow football, not as closely as other people. And that Tom Brady left, I'm not like once Tom Brady leaves, I'm not rooting for the Patriots anymore. That's absurd. But I do have to admit that my interest has gone a little bit down, because, I just...
I'm sorry, I know I have the Eagles hat on from the Super Bowl.
It hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. I try not to look at it.
Except you'd already won it 5 times.
Well, there's always a 6th.
Yeah. Which you have now.
I know. Oh, man. I gotta watch more games. Whenever I talk about football, it always reminds me how much I enjoy it, and then I think, I should watch a game, and then it's Sunday, and I have homework to do. And I'm like, I should do homework.
I really thought that, like, the Patriots would rebound from the Brady-Belichick breakup faster than the Buccaneers would take off with Tom Brady, but I don't know. They say Father Time's undefeated, but it's just incredible what he's continuing to do. And then on the other side here, you have Cam Newton, who I thought, the man once went 15-1 with the Panthers, and now you look at what he's doing here, and he looks rather average.
Yeah.
So And Pats aren't having such a good season.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Tom Brady, we could talk about him forever, but what he's been able to do with his age, to me, is remarkable, especially if you listen to him talk about his regiment in terms of just health and fitness. You do understand a little bit why he's aged so well. He just, in terms of nutrition, in terms of working out, he does a lot of band work with, different band strengths to keep joints strong but still mobile. So, if I'm looking at it from a coaching perspective, I'm just a little assistant coach, and, he has nutritionists and, all these and strength coaches. But when you do look at that, you can understand how he is maintained it. And, there's some luck there. He hasn't had...
He had the ACL injury
in
in 08, but that's really the only thing, right?
Yeah, other guys are plagued with injuries.
Yeah.
I know baseball a little more, but if you look at someone like Ken Griffey Jr., insane talent, had 500 and something home runs, and was hurt all the time. And you could argue why, and some, I don't know how true this is, but it feels like some guys have that talent, but also have a propensity for injuries that other guys who have that same talent don't have. And it's unfortunate. And, I guess luckily Brady doesn't have the injury propensity. But
any other sports besides baseball and football?
Those are the two main ones. I do watch golf.
Okay.
So not all the time, and I don't keep up enough to be able to say right now like who's on the top and everything. But when the big tournaments happen, I'll try and catch the last 2 days. Yeah.
Yeah. Every time I watch golf, I always there's usually at least one or two moments where I really get into it. I don't know if there's like a really long putt or something like that, or a great drive off the tee that's like right in the middle of the fairway, and you get excited. You think golf is like a very slow pace, calm game, and when there's a lot on the line, that's not really the case. And I think to myself, I should try to watch this more.
Yeah.
This is actually really exciting.
I find golf extremely intense, and I don't know if that's my own kind of strangeness, but what I do is imagine being in their situation. Like, imagine being in a really intense moment. It's only you're hitting this little ball and you're trying to get it into near some flag that's like 200 yards away, and the amount of focus but calmness that takes. If you're just a little tense, and they're obviously at the world stage, but I remember baseball, if you're a little nervous, your body just acts differently, and you can't really quantify it, but there are subtle things that you might not do as sharply. Your reflexes might be just a little bit slow. There's so many things that can happen. And with golf, you need such a perfect swing to be able to get it where you want it. And for these people to be able to control themselves in such a way where the pressure doesn't get to them, and they're able to come out on the other side of these really intense moments, I think is remarkable.
Yeah, but one of my favorite sports moments from recent history was just watching Tiger Woods' comeback, and culminating when he won the Masters again was just... I'd never heard, I guess when the Red Sox won the World Series, just various, I could hear other rooms on my hall, I knew that they had won at that point, but I heard reactions, I could tell other people were watching that, because that was just such a big moment, even for people that maybe don't follow the sport as closely.
Oh, for sure.
Everybody knows Tiger Woods.
Oh, for sure. So. The fall and then the comeback, how could you not be interested at the very least? Regardless of what you think of him, the fact that he was so bad in the middle there, and then was able to make a comeback however long it took, it's interesting. And how you could not, like I said earlier, how you could not be interested or invested at least a little bit in it, I don't know.
Yeah, one of the greatest sporting comebacks ever.
Oh yeah.
Not just golf, across the board. All right. Well, if there's anything else you want to talk about, I know we've covered a lot with all your various positions and careers that you've had. But yeah, we are... I know we had to wait a couple times because of noise going on outside. I'll see. This is probably going to be at least an hour with everything. But yeah, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, of course.
And taking the time out of your evening.
It's been fun.
Yeah. Been wanting to get you on for a while, and glad it finally worked out. So
Yeah, it's been great. I remember you asking me last year.
Yeah.
And me thinking, like, I got to find time here. But, it came around eventually, and I'm glad it did.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, I'm wrapping up and about to graduate, but I'm certainly hoping to, and again, COVID, who all knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But best of luck when we get to track season with the throwers and everything, and if I can't be here physically, I'll definitely be keeping up with you guys and wishing you all the best of luck, and hopefully we get to have some sort of competition season. But
I
we'll see where
appreciate
things
it.
are.
And, good luck to you as well, as you were talking earlier about graduating soon, all that's going on. Best of luck just, I guess, navigating, really, and trying to find your way in whatever sense that means. But
Yeah. Well, I appreciate hearing your story and the advice that you have, having gone through it already. And
Thanks.
And I guess still navigating through it, because it's not like a 1-year process. You're always looking at the next chapter, and nothing lasts forever. So
yeah, we'll see what the next stage holds, I suppose.
yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, and have a good night.
Thanks.